Welcome to the Aversio Experience, the podcast where functional mushrooms meet real life, real science, and real people who are ready to feel better than they ever thought possible. I'm Brandi Garden. I'm the co-founder here at Aversio Wellness, and I'm here with my fabulous co-host, Dr. Desiree Caruso, naturopathic physician.
Hi, everyone. Mushrooms are symbols of interconnectedness. And every episode, we are here to connect you with the health, the wisdom, and the science that fungi have brought us on our own journey to this moment. We believe functional mushrooms are critical to the maintenance of our physical well-being, our mental clarity, and our collective vitality. These organisms have sustained life on this planet for hundreds of millions of years. And it turns out they have a lot to offer us too.
Yes, and our ancestors knew this. They had deep, intuitive, cultural connections to mushrooms long before modern science caught up. And yet today, in a world where we should know better, fungi remain understudied, undervalued, and wildly misunderstood. And that is exactly why we're here, because Aversio means change, and it's our mission to change lives through fungi.
There's a mushroom for every moment.
And we're so glad that you are here to share this one with us. Let's dive in. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Aversio Experience. I'm Brandi Garden, the co-founder here at Aversio Wellness.
And I'm Dr. Desiree Caruso, naturopathic physician. And today we are going to kick off something new.
Yes, we are. This is the first episode in a 3-part series that we are calling the Skin Series. And today is all about psoriasis. Next episode is going to be about eczema. So if you have eczema and you're thinking, what about me? That one's next. And then after that, we're going to talk about acne. 3 very different conditions, 3 very different mushrooms doing the heavy lifting, and really 3 different conversations that I think a lot of you have been waiting for. So this is for you.
Yeah, skin is such an interesting organ to talk about because it's, the one health story for the most part that's on display. You can
Yes.
hide a lot of what's going on inside your body that most people don't know, but you can't always hide what's happening on your skin.
Yes, and I know you know this from personal experience. I'm sure we'll get into that, both of us. So let's just set the scene for today. So I want you to picture someone getting dressed for work and without even thinking about it, choosing the long sleeves. Not because it's cold outside, but because there is a patch of something on their elbow that they would rather not have to explain today again. Picture someone at a pool party, sitting at the edge in shorts instead of getting in because their knees are having a flare week and they know the look on people's faces when they ask if it's contagious. Picture someone lying in bed, scrolling through yet another cream, another miracle serum, an ad for yet another some type of fix, a forum post. It's 11 at night and they're up because the itching started again and sleep isn't happening until that itch calms down.
Yeah, and if any part of that sounded familiar either for you or somebody that you love, this episode is for you. Because psoriasis can be a misunderstood condition. And we're going to talk about that today in the wellness space. People call it a skin problem, right? It's on the skin, but it's not necessarily a skin problem. It's also an immune system condition. And that happens to show up on the skin.
Yep. I know it too well. That distinction changes everything about how you think about supporting it. And I remember when that shift happened for me. So let's actually get into what is happening in the body, not just on the body.
Okay, so here's the picture. Normally, your skin cells are going through a full life cycle over about a month. They're born deep in the skin, they mature, they rise to the surface, and then they shed. So that's roughly 28 to 30 days from start to finish. And everyone is different, but it's approximately that. In psoriasis, that cycle can get slammed into fast forward. So instead of a month, it can happen in 3 to 7 days. Your body is producing new skin cells faster than it can shed the old ones. So then they pile up on the surface.
Yeah.
And that pile up is what shows up as those thick, scaly, and often silvery patches.
Yes. So it's not that the skin is dirty and it's not that the skin is dry. I don't know how many people said, just moisturize. It's not being taken care of properly is not the issue. It's just producing too much, too fast.
Yeah. And the reason it's producing too much too fast comes down to the immune system. There is an immune system component with psoriasis. And psoriasis is now understood as an autoimmune condition that's driven largely by a specific signaling pathway involving two immune messengers. They're called interleukin 23 and interleukin 17. So sometimes you'll see it written as IL-23 and IL-17 in that axis. But here's the simple version for you. So something, and researchers are obviously still working things out in terms of exactly what combination of genetics and environment does this, but it triggers immune cells in the skin to start producing this interleukin 23. And this one in particular tells a certain population of immune cells called the Th17 cells, so the T helper cells, to start pumping out IL-17, so another signal. Then this IL-17 hits the skin cells directly, comes in contact with it, and then tells them to multiply faster and start producing their own inflammatory signals right back.
Yeah. So it just becomes this loop.
Exactly. It's a feed forward loop. So the immune system activates the skin cells then activate more immune response, and then the cycle just sustains itself. And that's why, some of the newer prescription treatments for psoriasis will specifically target these interleukins, IL-17 and 23 directly. So understanding how that pathway is involved with psoriasis has changed how the condition has been treated over the last decade or so.
Yes, it's just wild to me to hear it, that something happening at that microscopic cellular level is what shows up as a patch on your skin, on your elbow, on your scalp somewhere. It's so weird. It's so weird.
Yeah, I mean, totally. It is, right? It's one system talking to another within our body. And then there's also this second piece to this that I do think gets far less attention than it deserves, which is oxidative stress.
Okay, here we go. Now you're talking to me. Break it down for us.
Okay, so your body is constantly producing what are called reactive oxygen species or free radicals. And these are a normal byproduct of things from metabolism and immune activity. So, under healthy conditions, your antioxidant systems will neutralize them and everything stays balanced. In psoriasis, that balance can tip. So, researchers have consistently found elevated markers of oxidative stress in psoriatic skin and in the bloodstream of people with psoriasis, alongside reduced levels of the body's own antioxidant defenses.
Yeah, so there's more damage happening and less cleanup happening to manage it, this imbalance.
I think that's a really great way to put it. And that oxidative stress doesn't just sit there passively. It can feed back into the inflammatory cycle that we just talked about. It can further activate those same immune pathways and contribute to the cell damage that keeps that whole cycle going. There was this review published in the International Journal of Molecular Sciences, and it laid this out clearly. Oxidative stress isn't a side effect of psoriasis. It's considered one of the contributing factors in the disease process itself.
Yeah. So when we talk later about antioxidant support, you hear it all the time, right? How many antioxidants are you getting? This is high in antioxidants. That's not a wellness buzzword. That's targeting an actual documented piece of what's going on in this particular condition.
Yeah, that's correct. So, psoriasis can range from a really small patch to something that significantly affects someone's quality of life.
Yeah.
And it's also linked to other health conditions like psoriatic arthritis that you know about, and even cardiovascular risk, which is, why working with a practitioner matters, right? Having practitioners on your health team. So today, we're going to talk about functional mushrooms as part of that care, not as just a total replacement. Because as we know, health is all encompassing of multiple factors, and it's rarely ever one particular thing.
Yeah. Always the disclaimer, and always an important one. Before we get to triggers, can we talk about the fact that psoriasis isn't just one thing? I feel like most people picture a single image when they hear the word. And that's just really, as you just mentioned, it's not the whole story.
Yeah, that's such an important point. So there are multiple different types of psoriasis as well. So for example, plaque psoriasis is the most common form, and it makes up somewhere around 80 to 90% of cases. And it's typically when you see psoriasis on someone, it's usually plaque psoriasis. It's raised, it has red patches, has a silvery scale. Typically, it's usually on the elbows, the knees, the scalp, and the lower back. There's also, another form of psoriasis called guttate psoriasis, which shows up as small drop shaped spots. And it's often triggered by a strep infection. And it tends to appear more in children and younger adults.
Mm.
Then there's inverse psoriasis, which shows up in the folds of the skin, the underarms, the groin. It can be under the breasts, and it looks smooth and red rather than scaly because the moisture in those areas changes how it presents. Then there's pustular psoriasis, which involves small pus-filled blisters. There is erythrodermic psoriasis. It's rare but serious, where the inflammation covers most of the body and can actually become a medical emergency. So, there's a bunch of different types of psoriasis, and they present differently. And it also depends on the different factors that
Yeah.
are the cause of it.
Yeah. And I, as somebody who had psoriasis from very young, I remember thinking that, other people that would say that they had it didn't have it because theirs didn't look like mine. So someone could be listening right now, not even realizing that what they have is a form of psoriasis just because it doesn't look like the elbow patches that they've seen in all those, honestly, commercials on TV where they just
Hmm.
show the one.
Yeah. And I think that's why getting a real diagnosis
Mhm.
matters so much. I mean, you and I have talked about labels and identity and things, and sometimes having an identity with, a disease or a diagnosis doesn't actually benefit the person.
Yeah.
But, in terms of treatment and figuring out exactly what it is, it allows for more direction.
Yeah.
And, that underlying immune mechanism, which we talked about, IL-23 and 17, that loop that we just described, it's shared across most of these subtypes. But how it shows up on the body can look really different from person to person. And,
Yeah.
and that's such an important distinction. We're all unique.
Okay, so let's talk about what actually triggers the flare, because I think this is where people feel the most out of control. I have been there. That is why I have you for my friend.
Yeah, so triggers obviously vary a lot from person to person, but there are common ones that we've seen in terms of patterns amongst people. Stress being the number one thing. And you wouldn't believe how many people overlook stress as a
Hmm.
cause for a trigger of pretty much anything, but
Yeah.
psoriasis being one of them. A skin injury like a cut, a scrape, or even a bad sunburn, which is so fascinating. And it's called the
Hmm.
Koebner phenomenon when it triggers new patches at that injury site. So
Yeah.
certain infections, cold, dry weather as well. And then for some people, even specific medications. And Brandi, you say this all the time, and this was a big pillar in your book, as
Hmm.
well as that genetics load the gun and environment, lifestyle, these other triggers,
Yeah.
pull the trigger, so to
Triggers pull
speak.
the trigger. Yeah, it's your lifestyle, right? And I am living proof of that. Today am very happy to say there's no psoriasis on my body. But from the time I was 15, I never knew when it was going to get better or worse. And it was all of those lifestyle things that I was so unaware of prior to now, all of those little triggers. It wasn't one thing. I know today it wasn't one thing. And that awareness is such a gift to me. Okay, this feels like a good moment for me to just jump in because I do have my own history on this one. And for me, it was 15 years old. It was that young. And I had a father who had psoriasis. So when it showed up on my skin, there was really no question that's what it was because it looked just like his. And I knew what he was doing to treat it. So I just did what he was doing. And there's a whole chapter about this in my book. All of the coal tar shampoos and the creams and the offers for light therapy. And there are many, many treatments out there available for it. None of them worked for me. I hope that's not the case for everyone. But I know now the reason they didn't work for me is because I was not getting to the root cause of that psoriasis. I for sure didn't know anything about IL-17, even though 17, if you know me, is my favorite number and shows up everywhere. There's a chapter about that in my book too, the ones and sevens. So it's not lost on me that I am someone who has to be very mindful of triggering my IL-17. And yeah, I've come through a long pharmaceutical journey to get to really mushrooms and meditation. And I'm very happy to share my personal story in hopes that somebody else finds the way for them, but to know that what worked for me likely isn't going to be exactly what works for you. It's really listening to your body, listening to those whispers. Don't let it have to scream in such a huge flare before you realize I'm doing this to me, which means I have the power to undo this for me.
I'm so glad that you shared that with those who are listening, because I think what you just described, that sense of your own body feeling unpredictable
Hmm.
is something that is not only for people experiencing psoriasis on their
Hmm.
skin, right? It's for a wide range of health conditions. And I hear this from patients too. And it's one of the hardest parts of any chronic immune condition,
Yep.
right? Not just managing that physical symptom, but managing the anxiety and all the feelings that go along with it of not knowing when that next flare is coming.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot of mental load that people do not see from the outside. And that just brings us right back to that loop. The
Mm.
mental load of the unpredictability of the embarrassment, the stress it causes is what's causing it. So you're caught in this when you're in it. I've been in it. It's a tough place to be.
Yeah, and that mental load is part of why the stress connection isn't just anecdotal,
Hmm.
right? Stress hormones can also influence immune signaling,
Yeah.
including some of the very pathways that we talked about earlier. So the stress of living with a visible condition can for some people become part of what perpetuates it. So it is a
Yeah.
difficult loop for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to sit with that for a second because I don't think people realize how real the mental health piece truly is. And how many people have been told it's all in their head? And the truth is, it's not that, it's really there. We're really experiencing the discomfort, the pain, the itch, the whatever it is. But that mental health piece is what's missing in the, I'm going to say, standard general practitioner office.
Yeah, because it is significant as well documented. So,
Hmm.
depending on the study, current estimates place global prevalence of psoriasis somewhere between 60 to 125 million people. And across a large analysis of 56 studies published in the journal Psychiatry Research, researchers found that roughly 1 in 5 adults with psoriasis experience depression and a similar proportion experience anxiety. Other studies looking specifically at quality of life have found that anywhere from 78 to 89% of patients report their psoriasis meaningfully affects their day to day life.
Yeah, that is not a small side effect. That is most people with this condition. And I was never diagnosed with depression or anxiety, would not actually describe myself as someone with any of those presentations, but I for sure lived in chronic stress. Low
Mhm.
grade, people outside of me probably didn't even see it, or it just came out as people pleasing or perfectionism, but that's stress. That living in
Mhm.
survival mode was my picture.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the majority too. And that's why, if you look at clinical guidelines in the UK, they now recommend that dermatologists actively screen for depression and anxiety when they're assessing psoriasis severity. And like you
Yes.
said, it doesn't mean that the stress just shows up as depression or anxiety. It can show up in other ways. So the physical and emotional pieces aren't separate conversations, they're part of the same conversation.
Yes, I'm so glad we're saying that. Okay, so let's get into the part I think everyone's been waiting for. Where do functional mushrooms actually come into this conversation? Because that was it for me. That was the thing.
Okay, so let's talk about chaga because chaga is like the mushroom for psoriasis. So
Hmm.
scientifically, its name is Inonotus obliquus, and it isn't a mushroom in the way that people typically picture one. And you've touched on this before because it grows as a hard, black, charcoal-like mass on birch trees, and it's mostly in cold northern climates like Siberia, Russia, and even across Canada.
Yeah, and this one has such a rich backstory. I love it so much. I'm probably going to read this as a story to my grandkids. I know you love the folklore side of this as much as the compound side of it too.
Yeah, I really do. So, people in Russia and Siberia have used chaga since at least the 16th century, brewed as a strong tea or tincture for everything from gut and liver complaints to general vitality, as well as immune resilience during long winters. It's also been used as a restorative by some Indigenous groups across Canada as well, which is fascinating. I love learning about the traditional uses of functional mushrooms, and I know you do too.
Yeah, it always makes me wonder why they left that out of my social studies textbooks, right? I did a lot of teaching in social studies through grades 3, 4, 5, all the way up to grade 7 about cedar and salmon and all of the beautiful things created by Mother Nature used by these incredible Indigenous communities. And because I taught here in Canada, it was often Indigenous groups across Canada, the Cree, the Ojibwe, and we never talked about chaga. Why did we not? Why was it left out? Where are the mushrooms in all of that education? But there's an even older reference too. Am I right?
There is, and it's probably one of my favorite details in mycology. So there is writing attributed to Hippocrates in ancient Greek medicine, and it describes infusions made from this kind of birch fungus being
Mhm.
used to wash and care for wounds on the skin. So the
Yeah.
idea of chaga having some relationship with skin health isn't a modern wellness invention. People have been reaching for it on and around the skin for thousands of years.
Yeah. And I have to ask the honest question. Is there any folklore specifically about psoriasis? Because we keep saying the skin, but is there anything that is actually psoriasis?
Right. Okay. So not that I can find, but psoriasis is a distinct named condition
Mhm.
and it's a relatively modern medical classification. So it wouldn't show up by that name in centuries old, like, folk medicine texts. But
Right.
what the historical record actually documents is broader. So general skin soothing, wound care, and supporting the body through illness. And I think that is frankly more interesting than a tidy folklore claim would be if it was
Yeah.
specifically about psoriasis, because it tells us that people noticed this fungus doing something for the skin and for its resilience long before anyone understood the mechanism. Right? We
Yeah.
talked about the different forms of psoriasis and what can cause it. So, wound care, that could be a reason for it to appear.
Right.
So modern research is now filling in that why piece. And what it's filling in lines up remarkably well with everything that, we just spent a few minutes describing about psoriasis. So
Yeah.
this immune overactivation and oxidative stress.
Yes, amazing. Okay, so walk us through what the compounds are actually doing then. So the chaga comes off the tree. We're preparing it. So for us, we're delivering that in a capsule as an extract. So it's been through a process. Those compounds are getting inside me. What's happening?
hmm So the two things that matter most from a compound standpoint are chaga's antioxidant content
Hmm.
and a group of compounds that we love called triterpenes, including one called betulinic acid, which is
Hmm.
specific to chaga itself.
Yeah.
And it originates in the birch tree itself, and it's absorbed and concentrated by the mushroom as it grows. So chaga is measured to have one of the highest antioxidant capacities of any natural substance that researchers have tested, typically measured using the ORAC scale, which stands for the oxygen radical absorbance capacity.
Yeah.
And it is essentially a measure of how effectively something neutralizes free radicals in a lab setting. Hey everyone, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about a pattern that I see again and again in my practice, and I've even lived it myself. It's the people who are doing everything right, eating well, sleeping as best they can, moving their bodies, managing their stress, and still feeling like they're running at 80%. The immunity that catches everything going around, the nervous system that never fully resets, the energy that is there but not quite where it used to be, the fog that lifts eventually but not as fast as it should. What I've found both clinically and personally is that what's often missing is whole body foundational support, not one thing targeted at one symptom, a comprehensive daily ritual that addresses the terrain.
And that is what the 4 mushroom blend does. This is the product that I reach for when life is a lot. And honestly, when is it not? It's the reishi, the lion's mane, maitake, and shiitake, 4 of the most powerful functional mushrooms in the world, in just a single half teaspoon of extract powder. It's so simple. Add it to your coffee, your smoothie. I put it in my matcha. It can be part of your morning ritual, or you can use it in the evening and done. It just disappears. I use my electric mushroom mixer to blend it in there, and you barely taste it. And what you're getting in that half teaspoon is 9,750 milligrams quantity crude equivalent of mushroom intelligence with 40% verified beta glucans. And that number really does matter. Beta glucans are how you verify that a mushroom supplement is actually able to do something. That 40% is a level that most brands in this category cannot match.
And the reishi is so helpful to be supportive of your stress response and your sleep. The lion's mane supporting cognitive clarity and nerve health, the maitake supporting immune function and metabolic balance, and the shiitake adding antioxidant and immune depth. Together, they work the way your body actually works, as a system, not one symptom, one product, one ritual, comprehensive support.
Yeah, this is the blend that I would recommend to someone who doesn't know where to start. And it's the one that I'd recommend to someone who already has a protocol and then wants to add a foundation underneath everything else. So head on over to aversiowellness.com, use code podcast15 at checkout for 15% off. And that's for anyone in our community, anytime, any order.
Consistency is where the results live. This is the ritual that makes consistency easy.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen the test done in a recording. So we worked with a mycologist, Dr. Ludovic Renard, love you, and was able to ask about these compounds. And he was able to find something to show me putting these free radicals in the presence of chaga, which has antioxidant properties. And then they would set a timer. How long does it take the chaga to neutralize the free radicals in this petri dish, essentially? Fascinating. And all I needed to know for me to start using chaga regularly in times of need, especially in the summertime for me. So given everything that you explained earlier about this oxidative stress picture being part of the psoriasis picture, not just a side effect, then that's that real first connection point for us.
Yeah, it is. So the other point is talking about the immune piece, because this is where research gets more specific. Chaga contains polysaccharides, including beta glucans. They're water soluble. And so studies on these compounds have shown that they can influence immune cell behavior in meaningful ways. So there was research published in this one study looking at chaga polysaccharides, and they found that they helped rebalance the ratio between two different types of immune cells, Th17 cells and T regulatory cells. And that's where these two cells, when there's an imbalance in specific ratios, it can present and is linked to specific autoimmune conditions. So the fact that it's bringing it back into balance is very cool.
Yeah, and there's the Th17 cells, the same players from that psoriasis pathway that we talked about earlier. All comes together.
Totally, the very same family. And that particular study was conducted in the context of colitis, which is an inflammatory bowel condition. So there's that distinction too. But Th17 and Treg balance, like I mentioned, is relevant across multiple inflammatory conditions like psoriasis, because it is a fairly universal immune regulatory system. It's not something that's just unique to the gut and colitis. So I thought it's just so cool seeing a natural compound helping shift that balance towards a more regulated state in one particular condition is exactly the kind of finding that makes researchers curious about other conditions that are driven by that same overactive pathway. And psoriasis is very much included in that.
Yeah, I appreciate how specific that you're being about what each study looked at, because I think don't come at us, people. And in general, your beautiful community out there listening, we're trying to share education in hopes that someone hears something that's helpful to them. And we're trying to find the best research we can to match. But we are always going to tell you there's not enough mushroom research out there. There's more coming. There's a mushroom intelligence that we don't even know everything about yet. It's science in progress. So I love how specific you're being and telling us it's not, there was this giant clinical trial done on psoriasis with chaga. It's not that it's not effective. It's that there hasn't been enough research for it yet. So we're using the research that is there to put the pieces together for you, because nobody else is doing that. And I love it so much. I just want to, it brings me back. Many of you know, if you've been around in this community for a while, that I took an injectable biologic immunosuppressant for over a decade to treat my psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. And it was a TNF alpha, a tumor necrosis factor alpha. So I was all that time after the wrong thing, because the science when my drug was created by the pharmaceutical company was the best they know of at that time. And it did give me benefits, but I got skin cancer more than one time. I got it 3 times because tumor necrosis factor was taking away my body's ability to keep that at bay. So it's science in progress. This is what I'm saying, is we only know what's being researched and studied. So thank you to all the researchers and scientists out there. We're just getting better and we're getting closer. So just that hop, that now we know more carefully, more closely, that IL-17 is what I should have been targeting all that time. not the tumor necrosis factor that gave me some benefits. It just makes me very excited. And I love, Dr. Desiree, how specific you are with things. It makes my heart happy.
Okay, so speaking of tumor necrosis factor alpha, with, you were taking this pharmaceutical to
Mhm.
impact those levels. I mean, there is research on chaga extracts impacting that as well,
Yeah.
right? Looking at chaga and how it impacts macrophages, which are immune cells central to the
Yeah.
inflammatory response. But they found that chaga extract, if it's a dual extract, can meaningfully influence the release of inflammatory markers like TNF alpha and
Yes.
other molecules like interleukin 1 beta.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating how chaga can impact these specific immune cells and signals that are implicated in the same pathways that pharmaceuticals are looking at. And I think
Yeah.
the benefit of choosing something that is more natural, where you get all of these different compounds, is that it's
Yes.
not just looking at one button. It's looking at all these compounds are working together to be more gentle
Yeah.
to the system, right?
Yeah.
So when we look at this research study in 2025, researchers applied a chaga extract topically, and this was a mouse model, and it was for atopic dermatitis, which we're going to talk about in our next episode, but it's relevant. It's a different inflammatory skin condition, but they found that it improved dermatitis severity scores significantly, reducing oxidative stress markers directly in the skin and calming inflammatory cytokine activity, as well as modulating TNF alpha. So that just points to chaga's anti-inflammatory and
Yes.
antioxidant action showing up in real skin tissue and not just in a petri dish.
Yeah.
And you were evidence of that because of how it impacted you, not only
Yeah.
your skin and the patches on your skin, but also the inflammation you were dealing with
Yes.
as well for psoriatic
Yes.
arthritis.
Absolutely. And that was it. I was managing the skin condition until my early 20s. So almost 10 years of just it was on my skin. Then it was in my joints. And I can mark the time. I was a new young teacher. There was a lot of stress in my life. And that is when it kind of hopped to become psoriatic arthritis in my joints as well, which is essentially like psoriasis inside your joints. That inflammation, I think that's why the immunosuppressant I took gave me my life back, because it managed the inflammation in my joints so that I could physically move, because I was young and active and wanted to do that. Again, I was never treating the root cause, not understanding it was just enough to get me by. So I just there's this consistent story running across all of this right now. It's hitting so close to home for me. Traditional use pointing at skin and resilience. So, and modern research showing now that chaga calms oxidative stress. So, we're not saying chaga cures psoriasis. We're not saying that. We're saying chaga calms oxidative stress. It helps regulate the same immune cells involved in psoriasis, and it can produce measurable results when tested directly on inflamed skin. And this is why I use Hello Joyous Body Butter, I mean, every day this week so far, because our dear friends over at Hello Joyous put chaga extract in their beautiful skin products, inside
Yeah,
and out.
they're amazing. And I think also what you described is a fair and accurate summary too of what chaga is doing. And I will add one more piece, which I very lightly touched on, but it's the extraction method.
Hmm.
And this matters scientifically. Like, we don't just want to be a broken record here. It's not just a product detail.
Hmm.
Chagas beta glucans are water soluble. Beta glucans are water soluble and will be present if it's a hot water extract.
Yeah.
But triterpenes, like betulinic acid in chaga, which is responsible for that massive antioxidant activity, they are not. They require an alcohol extraction to be
Hmm.
drawn out. So if it's only a hot water extract or just a chaga extract, even like a simple tea, which is amazing, like, to use mushrooms and herbs with our cooking and tea and things like that,
Hmm.
but you're missing that triterpene content. So if
Yes.
there's a dual extraction process, which uses both hot water and alcohol, that's what allows a product to capture both sides of chaga's chemistry that is so beneficial for our bodies.
Yeah. I always think of how many people I've spoken to that have chaga. We have friends in Northern Ontario who have chaga growing on the birch stands right on their property. And they will harvest that chaga and brew it as a tea and then keep it in their fridge and just drink a little every day. And I love that. I love
Mhm,
that. And they're getting so many beneficial compounds by doing it. But it is different when we take it
mhm.
as a supplement, when it's been through an extraction process. And this is exactly why we built our chaga product. And that's why it's an 8-to-1. That's why it's a dual extract. And that's why we're using the whole fruiting body rather than chaga mycelium grown on grain. Like, stop the insanity. Who grows chaga on grain? Like Dr. Desiree just explained, the beneficial compounds are inside the birch tree. The chaga is drawing it out of the tree and building the medicine inside. Do you think that if we grow it on grain, the grain has the precursors to those beneficial compounds? It does not. And I'm not a scientist. That does not take rocket science to figure out. It makes me a little crazy. But it's a detail that sounds technical, but it's the difference between getting the full range of what's actually been studied in the research versus a little fraction of it, and then companies telling you you're getting what's in the research. This isn't that.
No, it's
I'm going to
an
breathe for a
important
minute now.
distinction. Yeah.
Letting it go.
Yeah. Okay, there's one more piece of this puzzle that I do want to bring in. We've talked about, the immune system, and we've talked about inflammation and how chaga is so amazing for those things. But there's one thing that ties the whole conversation together, and it's the gut-skin axis.
Yes. Yes. I feel like every conversation we have actually comes back to the gut. You can't get away from the gut health. We have to come back to it.
No, you can't, right? The research keeps pointing there. And as researchers are uncovering more and more information about our microbiome, we are realizing like the foods that you're eating and your gut health impacts everything within our body.
Yeah.
So there was this systemic review of gut microbiome studies in psoriasis patients in particular. And they found that there were consistent differences in gut bacterial composition compared to people without psoriasis, including shifts in the ratios of certain bacterial groups. Cool. And more recent research has gone even further, showing that psoriasis patients tend to have lower levels of specific short-chain fatty acid producing bacteria, the ones that are considered beneficial, alongside an increase in more pro-inflammatory bacterial populations.
Amazing. Amazing. This is why Dr. Desiree sent me to have like full stool testing, looked at my microbiome. I think I have pages and pages to see like what's actually happening in this healed gut of mine. So yeah, short chain fatty acids are the ones that help calm inflammation throughout the body, right? That's what we're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They support the gut lining, and they also help regulate the immune system well beyond the digestive tract. So when that balance does shift in the wrong direction, it can contribute to that same systemic inflammatory tone that shows up on the skin. So in fact, I thought it was cool. There's this one recent meta-analysis of over 1,000 participants, and it found that probiotic interventions measurably improve psoriasis severity scores. So that is a meaningful finding because it's direct clinical evidence that what is happening in the gut doesn't stay in the gut.
Yes. So where does chaga fit into that piece specifically then when we talk about the gut?
Right. So chaga's polysaccharides have been studied for what's called a bifidogenic effect, meaning that research has shown that they can help support the growth of beneficial bifidobacteria in the gut. It is an early layer in research, but it means that chaga's influence on the body doesn't just stop at antioxidant and immune support. And we know this based on research looking at functional mushroom extracts and how it impacts gut health.
Yeah.
So, and that extends into that gut environment for people specifically with psoriasis. And we know now that it's connected to psoriasis severity. So that is the kind of connection that really makes this research area worth watching closely, for people who are experiencing this.
Yeah. This is everybody stopping to take their chaga right now. I just love how you frame the whole picture instead of just one isolated data point.
It's how it's supposed to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
I mean, I think with individuals with psoriasis, it's an autoimmune condition. And, there are patterns around oxidative stress and those markers specifically, and it's an inflammatory skin condition, right? And so layering on chaga for somebody who's also doing other things to address the foundations of health, and maybe even working with a dermatologist as well, or a naturopathic doctor who focuses their practice on dermatology and skin related conditions helps. Chaga is an added layer of support to make sure that you're managing your stress
Yeah.
right? And you're sleeping well and you're supporting your gut. These are all pieces that match and fit the puzzle to support psoriasis so that it can be in remission.
Yeah, such a helpful way to think about it. It's not instead of doing this thing over here that my doctor from when I was 15 wants me to do, it's this alongside. And that's
Mhm.
exactly what happened when I started adding mushrooms. I didn't delete everything all at once. I mean, some things I did, but it was the adding of something new and trying a new treatment, and I'm honest about it all the time. Lifestyle for me was like my sleep changed, my diet changed, so I nourished differently. I learned how to calm my nervous system. I learned to meditate. I literally took a course. I got rid of some people in my life who were inflammatory. It wasn't one thing, but learning about chaga gave me this hope that I was going to come to a time in my life that I wouldn't need to rely on a pharmaceutical always, that I could have something more natural that was benefiting more than just one part of my body. The pharmaceuticals are very specific. Right. Well, for like the TNF alpha I was taking, it literally went in, encapsulated all of the tumor necrosis factor in my body, and I peed it out. I had none. Well, that's very different than chaga coming in and balancing the TNF. It just makes so much sense to us. So I love this is not instead of a medication, a doctor, a treatment you're doing. It's alongside.
Yeah, totally. And it can be alongside until there is remission, and chaga is
Mhm.
maybe one of the things that is the only thing to
The
support you,
the
just like
maintenance.
you,
Yeah.
right? The maintenance in that.
Yeah. So if someone is listening right now and this is resonating, what would you actually want them to do?
There's a few things. First, if you have not had a real diagnosis that this is psoriasis, it would probably be very beneficial for you to know exactly what you're working for targeted support. Psoriasis can look similar to other skin conditions, and the correct diagnosis can really change everything about that treatment plan and be helpful for you to know exactly what you're dealing with, and from
Mhm.
an emotional standpoint, too. The second is pay attention to your own trigger pattern. Stress, skin injury, weather, certain infections. Not everyone's triggers are the same, so tracking yours over a few months can tell you more than any general advice could.
Mhm.
Third, if you are curious about chaga, just think of it as a daily cumulative practice rather than something you take once during a flare and expect results from.
Mhm.
Because antioxidant and immune regulatory support, they work over weeks and even months of consistency, not overnight.
Yeah. And if someone is standing in a store or scrolling online and trying to actually choose a chaga product, give them the clear details. What should they be looking for?
Right. You want to look for whole fruiting body, not mycelium grown on grain, since mycelium on grain products are often diluted with starch
Mhm.
and contain lower levels of the active compounds that we've been discussing this episode. But you want to look for a dual extraction because that way you're getting those triterpenes, the betulinic acid.
Mhm.
And, if you want to look at what are the percentages of beta glucans on there and is there third party lab testing? Is it organic
Mhm.
certified? Because these are all meaningful signs of transparency
Yeah.
because, what it means that what's on the label has actually been measured and it's not just assumed.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Those three things alone would filter out most of what's on the market today.
Really would.
Sadly, as I listen, I'm just like going through all the ones I know are on the store shelf where I shop, and I'm like, out, 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 out. That's tough. That's tough to swallow, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
This isn't a rescue product. It's a foundation that you build. And while this was such a rich place to start with the skin series, I'm almost as excited about what's coming because we're actually moving on to something that you've been dealing with in your life, Dr. Desiree, and it's eczema. So you're going to be sharing your own story on that one. Am I right?
I will. Yeah. And we are going to shift the mushroom focus to a mushroom that you have heard of before for reasons that will make a lot of sense once we get into the
Mhm.
mechanism.
Yes. So we're going to close out the series with acne, like we said, where some of the mushrooms we've been talking about are going to come back into the conversation, and you'll have to tune in to hear all about that.
It's going to be a great 3 episodes.
Yeah, it really is. And if today's conversation gave you a new way to think about your own skin or someone that you love, that's genuinely all we want out of an episode like this. We just want you to share the education and for your life to be healthier. And we will see you in part two.
Be well, everyone.
Thank you so much for being here today and for giving us this time with you. We hope that something in the episode landed, whether that's a new perspective, a piece of research that you hadn't heard before, or just a reminder that your health is worth taking seriously. And if someone in your life could benefit from what we talked about today, then please share this episode with them. That is genuinely how we grow. One conversation, one person at a time.
And if you're ready to bring functional mushrooms into your daily routine, we would love to support that. Head to aversiawellness.com and use the code podcast15 at checkout. It is our way of saying thank you for being a part of this community, and it saves you 15% on your order. And if you are not sure where to start, that's okay, because we have a mushroom wellness quiz on our website that will point you in exactly the right direction.
And if you haven't yet left us a rating and a review or subscribed to the podcast or followed us on social media, all of the links for that are in our show notes. And we would so appreciate your support there. It just helps us reach more people who need to hear this work. Thank you so much for sharing this moment with us.
Until next time, be well.